There's a certain rhythm to my life, stitched as tightly as the seams I sew. My name's Claire, and for the past 15 years, I've worked as a seamstress in a wedding boutique just off Main Street in a small New England town. You can smell the ocean if the wind blows right, and when the storefront door opens, it brings in the salt air mixed with the sweetness of the bakery next door. I'm 40, though my body often feels older. Working long hours at the sewing machine leaves my neck stiff and my arms sore. Some mornings I wake up with my hands curled into tight fists from the tension. Still, I love what I do, helping brides feel beautiful, watching dreams come to life in the shape of satin and lace. 2 years ago, my marriage ended quietly. There were no shouting matches, no big betrayals. Just silence that stretched too long between us until we stopped looking at each other the same way. Since then, it's been me and my son, Evan. Evan is 21 now and finishing his degree in physical therapy. He recently started taking massage classes, therapeutic and relaxation techniques, he says. I tease him that he picked it just to have an excuse to poke at people, but I know better. Evan has always been intuitive, gentle in a way that feels rare in men his age. He's the kind of son who still brings in the groceries without being asked and kisses my forehead before heading out the door. I've been dating someone new for a month now. His name is Scott. He's a contractor who owns a small remodeling business, and I've known him for years from the neighborhood. He was always friendly, offering to fix things around the house when I was newly divorced, and eventually I said yes to one of his offers for coffee. It's not serious yet, but we see each other a few times a week. He's solid, grounded, steady. Everything I thought I'd been missing. But Evan doesn't like him. At first, I thought he was just being protective. It's always been just us for a while now. But lately, his reactions have grown sharper. His silence louder. When I come home from seeing Scott, Evan barely looks up from his textbook. He'll ask, "How is it?" without really wanting the answer. The other night, I came home with my back aching from a long shift. I dropped my bag on the kitchen counter and rubbed my neck. Evan looked up from the couch, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You should let me help with that," he said. "We learned a new technique today. It could loosen the tension in your shoulder." I hesitated, then nodded. He was already moving toward me, guiding me gently to sit down. His hands, strong but careful, moved over the tight spots in my back with practiced ease. I closed my eyes, the pain slowly dissolving under his touch. "You're really good at this," I murmured. "Guess I've had years of watching you push yourself too hard," he said, his voice softer than usual. For a moment, I let myself sink into it, not just the massage, but the quiet closeness between us that felt both familiar and something else. I opened my eyes and found him watching me. Not in a clinical way, not like a student practicing technique, but with a focus that made my breath pause mid-chest. "You okay, Mom?" he asked gently. "Yeah," I replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired." And maybe that was true. Maybe I was just tired. Or maybe something had shifted between us without either of us knowing exactly when it began. Something has shifted between us, between me and Evan. It's not a single moment I can point to, not a flash of lightning or a sudden revelation. It's more like fog slowly lifting, revealing something that had always been there, just quietly waiting to be seen. Evan's been more attentive lately. Not just in the dutiful son way he's always been, but in something softer, deeper. His compliments linger a little longer. "You looked really pretty today," he said the other morning as I poured coffee in my robe. "That color makes your eyes look brighter." And then yesterday, as I was picking lint off the hem of my work dress, he murmured, "You're so sharp. I don't know how you do all this and still have time to care about everyone else." He looked at me like I was a puzzle he was slowly solving. There's love in his eyes, but it's not the kind I'm used to seeing from him. And it's making things harder. Because Scott is still in the picture. Scott is patient and kind. He texts me good morning calls to ask if I've eaten. He's everything a woman like me is supposed to want. A fresh start. A safe future. And yet, when I picture warmth, safety, I keep seeing Evan. That realization unsettles me. Tonight, just as I was folding up my measuring tape after a long day of fittings, I heard the bell above the salon door chime. I looked up expecting one of my coworkers, but there stood Evan. He was dressed in a dark hoodie and jeans, holding 2 cardboard cups of cocoa. His hair was slightly windblown, his cheeks pink from the cold. "Hey," he said, smiling. "You done for the day?" "Almost," I replied, surprised but happy. "What are you doing here?" "I thought we could take a walk. If you're not too tired." That simple question, if I was tired, hit me harder than I expected. I nodded slowly, rubbing the back of my neck. "I am," I admitted. "Long day." He stepped closer, leaned just near enough to brush his voice against my ear. "Then tonight, hot bath, bed, and peach oil." Goosebumps rose down my arms. I didn't even know he remembered the oil. I hadn't used it in months. I couldn't even respond. I just nodded, pretending to busy myself with tidying the counter. My chest fluttered with something warm and dangerous. But the air shifted the moment we stepped outside. There, leaning against his car just a few feet from the door, stood Scott. Casual, one leg crossed over the other, hands in his jacket pockets, as if this were all part of a plan. He pushed off the car when he saw me, walking toward us with a slow grin. "Hey, there you are," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. The kiss was light, friendly, but I felt Evan go rigid beside me. His jaw tightened, and I saw the muscle there twitch, just once, but enough to make my heart skip. I smiled as evenly as I could. Actually, Evan surprised me. We were just about to go for a walk. Scott looked from me to Evan, then nodded. "Okay, next time, then." I watched him get back in his car and drive away, the taillights casting a soft red glow over the street. Evan and I walked in silence for a few blocks, the only sound between us the crunch of gravel beneath our feet. The sky had that deep blue tint that comes just before full night, and the street lamps flickered on one by one. Then Evan broke the silence. "Do you like him?" His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even bitter. It was low, quiet, unsure. I stopped walking. "Why do you ask?" He looked straight ahead, hands in his pockets. "Because I can't stop thinking about him touching you."
Talking to you.
"Being with you." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I wasn't ready for this. For the weight in his voice. For the way his words made something stir in me, something I hadn't dared name. And for the first time, I realized I was just as torn as he was. The walk continued in silence after Evan asked his question. But it wasn't the silence of distance. It was thick with things neither of us could say yet. The kind of silence that hums under your skin. Without thinking, I reached out and slipped my arm around his. It felt natural, like something I'd done 1,000 times when he was a boy. But this time, when he responded, wrapping his arm gently around my waist and pulling me closer, it didn't feel the same. We walked that way for blocks.
Quiet. Close. Warm.
I rested my head briefly against his shoulder and murmured, "Scott's a nice guy. Normal. Stable. But I don't have strong feelings for him. Not really." Evan didn't answer right away. Then he stopped, turned to face me, and brushed a thumb along the curve of my temple before leaning in to kiss it softly. It was the gentlest touch, but it sent a ripple through my chest. "I understand," he said quietly. "You're still young, beautiful. Of course people want you. I get that. But I feel this jealousy I can't explain. Like I want to protect you from everyone. Like you're only mine." I couldn't breathe for a moment. His words landed deep, right in the place I'd been trying not to look. The part of me that felt wanted, seen, cherished in a way I hadn't been in years. When we got home, the house was dim and quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel more intimate. Evan went straight to the bathroom, and I heard the water begin to run. I stood there in the hallway, my coat still on, not knowing what to do with the ache blooming in my chest. A few minutes later, he poked his head out. "Go get comfortable," he said. "I'm almost done." I nodded, went to my room, and began changing slowly. The soft cotton of my nightgown felt like a second skin. I reached for my robe, and just as I slipped it over my shoulders, I heard the bathroom door creak. "Mom, do you need?" He stopped mid-step, eyes catching mine across the hallway. His gaze flicked down, then back up, and he froze. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, turning around and pulling the door shut. "It's okay," I called gently. "I'm almost ready." When I walked in, I had to stop and just take it in. He'd lit the few candles I kept by the sink, their flickering glow casting the whole room in soft amber. A towel was folded on the bench near the tub, my favorite body oil, peach, already opened and resting on the edge. The steam rose from the bath in slow curls, carrying the scent of lavender and vanilla. He had remembered everything. I turned to thank him, but he was already gone. Left me in that quiet warmth, alone, surrounded by a care so thoughtful it made my chest ache. In that moment, I didn't feel 40. I didn't feel like a tired woman with a bad back and a fading marriage in her rearview mirror. I felt wanted and deeply seen. I sank into the bath, the hot water immediately easing the dull ache in my lower back and shoulders. My hair floated around me like silk, and the candlelight shimmered along the surface, turning the water into something that looked almost magical. But inside me, nothing was still. My thoughts kept circling back to Evan.
The way he looked at me.
The way he spoke, like every word had weight. That kiss on my temples still lingered, a warm echo in my skin. He hadn't said it to get something. He'd said it because it was the truth. And that truth, it was doing things to me I didn't understand. My heart felt pulled in two directions. Scott was the safe path. But Evan made me feel like there was something I'd never let myself imagine. A different kind of love. A fierce, loyal tenderness that reached deeper than labels or logic. 10 minutes passed, and I was still lost in that storm of thoughts when I heard the door creak open again. I sat up a little, wrapping my arms around my knees. I expected maybe a towel. Maybe a question if I needed anything. But Evan stepped in holding a tray. A single glass of champagne shimmered under the candlelight, flanked by a small bowl of strawberries and squares of dark chocolate. My breath caught in my throat. "Evan," he smiled, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "You've done everything for everyone for so long," he said softly. "Tonight's about you. Only you." He set the tray down on the edge of the sink, then straightened slowly. He looked calm.
Certain.
But his hands trembled just slightly at his sides. Then, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, he met my gaze and said, "I'm waiting for you in the bedroom, when you're done here." And just like that, he left, quietly, without fanfare. The door clicked shut behind him. I stared at the champagne, the strawberries, the flickering candlelight. I was no longer sure where the edge was. But I knew, without a doubt, I had stepped right up to it. The bath had left me light as air and heavy as stone. My limbs were slow, my mind hazy from the heat and the champagne that sparkled in my veins. Every inch of me was soft and loose. The tension that usually clung to my shoulders melted into nothing. I dried off slowly, wrapping myself in the robe, drifting more than walking down the hallway. The house was quiet, but the kind of quiet that buzzes, like the air before a summer storm. When I stepped into the bedroom, I stopped in the doorway, stunned. Evan had made everything perfect. The lights were low. The bed was turned down, the peach oil resting on a clean towel beside it. Soft music played, slow, instrumental, like something you'd hear at a spa or a dream. He stood at the edge of the bed, shirt sleeves rolled up, eyes calm and unreadable. When he saw me, he smiled, not wide, not forced. Just a quiet, knowing curve of his lips. He patted the bed gently. "Come here," he said. "Tonight, I want to show you something new. A technique we haven't practiced yet. It's the most relaxing one we've learned." Still wrapped in my robe, I walked to the bed, my feet barely touching the floor. When I lay down on my stomach, he gently loosened the robe from my shoulders. I heard the oil bottle open, the soft scent of peach filling the air. And then his hands were on my back. Warm, firm, slow. Every touch unraveled something deeper in me. The way he moved wasn't rushed or mechanical. It was careful, reverent. His fingers traced down the curves of my back, along the edges of my shoulder blades, across the dip at my waist. I tried to focus on the massage, on the calm, but my thoughts weren't quiet anymore. My body wasn't either. I was burning quietly. Not in the frantic way of impulsive desire, but in something older, buried, awakened by care and closeness. Then his voice, low and gentle, floated above me. "Turn over." I hesitated, breath caught halfway between surrender and sense.
But I did as he asked.
The room shifted then. He moved slower, more delicate, working down my arms, across my collarbones, the oil warming under his touch. My eyes fluttered closed. The music blended with the thudding of my heart. And somewhere between one breath and the next, I felt his hand brush my cheek. I opened my eyes, and he was looking right into me. And then he kissed me. Not urgently, not hesitantly, but like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like the only thing. I didn't move.
Couldn't.
My body was too relaxed to run. My mind too full to resist. The softness of it, the quiet depth, made the world blur. Everything inside me came to a still, waiting point, like the eye of a storm. When he pulled back, he looked at me for a long moment. Then he lay beside me, not touching, not speaking, just there. And he didn't leave. The space between us on the bed was almost nothing. Just inches of quiet breath, and the low murmur of the music still humming from the speaker on the nightstand. Evan lay on his side, head propped against his hand, watching me in the soft, amber light. Neither of us spoke for a while. We didn't need to. Everything was suspended. That kiss, so tender and final, had tipped us into something new. Something we couldn't undo. There was no script for this part of our story. No guidebook for the way he looked at me now, like I was both a miracle and a mystery. I turned toward him, feeling the warmth of his arm near mine, the weight of his presence grounding me. My robe had slipped open slightly, the air brushing against my skin where his hands had once soothed every ache away. I felt vulnerable, but not afraid. I took a quiet breath and whispered, would you massage my stomach?" His eyes didn't flick away. They just softened. "Yeah," he said, his voice low. "Of course." My hand rested just below my navel, guiding his eyes. "Here," I said, "just below." My voice was calm, barely audible over the music. I get tense there, especially after long days. He nodded slowly, not questioning, just listening. His hand moved gently to the spot, the peach oil warm again as he rubbed it between his palms before touching me. When his fingers met my skin, I tensed, but not from discomfort. It was the opposite. It was too gentle, too tender, almost too much to bear. Every inch of me felt awake, aware of every brush, every pause. I looked up at the ceiling, heat rising in my chest. Then, half laughing, half flustered, I said, "I should be paying you for this." He paused, then leaned down just slightly, his voice warm near my ear. "You already do," he murmured. "Every time you let me take care of you." That was the moment I knew whatever this was, whatever name it would never have, it was already a part of me. Evan's hands moved in slow, tender circles, his fingers gliding just beneath my ribs, down to the soft curve below my belly. The pressure was perfect, gentle but grounded. It was the kind of touch that didn't just relax muscle but reached somewhere deeper, where feeling lived just under the surface. My breath came slower, fuller. I let my eyes close, one hand resting loosely on his wrist, not to stop him, but to hold on. There was a silence between us now that wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken things, years of closeness, quiet glances over coffee, shared memories, and all the complicated truths that had brought us here. My body felt like it was floating, yet somehow rooted, utterly safe. I didn't want to move. I didn't want the moment to end. And maybe he felt that too, because he stayed there, fingers still, his head dipping forward. Then, without a word, he leaned down and pressed a kiss right in the center of my stomach.
Soft.
Lingering. The sensation rippled through me like a spark and a wave all at once. I felt it in my throat, in the base of my spine, in the place where heartache once lived, but now something new was growing. Something impossibly warm and completely real. I reached out, brushed his hair back with trembling fingers. He looked up, his eyes full of something I couldn't name, but had always longed for. And in that moment, without needing to say it, I knew. This wasn't a crossing. It was a homecoming.